Good now. I am Ryan Erickson. Hello. I now see that my live has come up, so we shall see. Yes, I'm Ryan Erickson. This person on the right side of the screen is Niels Pflaeging, management exorcist, fellow anti-managerialist, I might say, and pursuer of the virtue of organizational democracy in our workplaces and beyond. Today, the topic is the new white paper from BetaCodex Network, the cell structure design patterns. And for those of you who may not be aware of either cell structure design or the white papers, well, Niels, I'd like to maybe you to take a moment to contextualize what we're talking about in terms of the research that we're doing with the network, as well as what this paper is and represents, and then maybe we can go from there.
Okay. So the context is this cell structure design is an open source approach, or social technology, as we like to call it, and it was published 4 years ago by Silke Herrmann and myself. And everybody can find it under www.cellstructuredesign.com. And cell structure design is an approach to democratic, consistently self-organized and decentralized organizational design. So seems very simple, but this notion of decentralization and the distinction between periphery and center, which you need to actually decentralize organizations, we know no other approach to org design or structures or organizational development that really has these things embedded and makes them doable. So cell structure design is, in a way, the first theoretically practical approach to how to decentralize organizations in very few time. Again, it was articulated 4 years ago. It is through an open source license. Everybody can use it, commercialize it, tweak it. The open source license is to be found under cellstructuredesign.com. And we published, Silke and I published this concept 4 years ago, but we immediately published a book, a handbook in German language, Zellstrukturdesign, that's the name of the concept in German. We published that in 2020, right in the COVID lockdown, the first COVID lockdown. And nevertheless, it sold well, and it's being adopted. Cell structure design is being adopted by quite a few organizations, but a few months ago we noticed that we hadn't published much about the approach. We hadn't really brought out anything significant about the approach, specifically in English language, so we needed to publish something. And that weaves the topic into what are these BetaCodex white papers. This white paper that we call Cell Structure Design Patterns is it puts together research outcomes, insights really from 20 years of us working with these concepts, because that was 20 years ago was when I joined the Beyond Budgeting Roundtable. So since then I have done this kind of work, and it has evolved. We have gained insights, and so this paper brings in that's a couple of weeks ago we sat together and thought, okay, what would be the essences that we should share at this point before the handbook in German in English will come out later this year? What could we share? What kind of insights are crucial and interesting to most people, or literally everyone in org design and organizational development? And we decided to put together this BetaCodex white paper, which is the 19th since 2008. It's the 19th BetaCodex white paper. You can find it under www.betacodex.org. It's free of charge, free of registration. Nobody needs to register anything. You can just download it, read it. And so far, the feedback has been very nice. One of my clients that's doing a client organization that's doing cell structure design right now, they said, this is very timely. It comes very handy to the work that we're doing.
Yeah, and several, again, the white papers being the ongoing artifacts, right?
Yes.
Of the research and the practice to what's happening in the network, and where the theoretical thinking and the practical thinking has come along in the ways. And
it's very important to note the BetaCodex white network itself is totally non-commercial. So like any professor at a university, research university would probably have her or his, or you often, they have their own white paper series, the same way we have a research paper series that we have been putting together since 2008. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And in that regard, there's several. Again, the concept of cell structure design, as you said, it's been with the BetaCodex network, and even before the network happened, and
Yes.
before the Beyond Budgeting Roundtable.
Yes.
And in the cell structure design patterns white paper now, which again we've been sharing about it recently too, and I think we'll share it in the comments here today. I mean, it references, I think, 4 other white papers in the series that give
Yes.
you a lot about the why is this important, what is cell structure design,
Yes.
and giving a lot of the pieces to the puzzle. And I think this white paper in particular, for me, it was oh my goodness, that divide the number of people by 7 in your organization, and you have
Yeah. Seems simple enough,
this
right?
seems simple enough. But again, just to give an idea of how many flips maybe are we going to need to, and the flip in terms of I would call it a paradigmatic process chain in terms of what is the flip that happens for a particular group of people. How do we group the people? There's so many concepts that came to me reading the paper. Value creation accounting. That was one that happened.
Great.
And that we can talk about that. The
Mm.
other was that organizational hygiene, i.e., taking a look at the processes that are currently in place,
Yes.
and evaluating those, and chucking them, for lack of a better term, but creating this sense of organizational hygiene, fitness, even,
Yes.
and then you develop the cell structure design at that point. So there's
Yes.
this process in the open space beta cycle, right, that it allows for many of these things to happen. And at the end, the sequential. Okay, so when we go live at the end of the open space beta cycle, the value creation accounting that's going to be live too, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
so I mean, I know I'm throwing a lot of concepts out there, but
it's
that to
interesting.
me is indicative of how much is packed into this white paper, and it kind of unlocks the concepts.
Yes, of course. We try in this paper. We try not to over-explain everything. So each of these patterns or insights is on just one page. There's an introduction about decentralization, organizational democracy, that has 3 pages or so, and then there are the patterns, 1 pattern per page. Sounds simple enough, right? But as in the second episode of BetaCodex Live, we talked about Ralph Kilman's wonderful white paper from 1978 or so, where he distinguishes between technique and technology. Right? Technique is like a tool, and the technology is to make the tool alive in a given context of a given organization. Of course, most tools like SAFe, etc., they don't have a proper technology, so they're just garbage thrown into an organization. Every time we talk of implementing something that is not a software or a machine, or even if a machine requires a technique that requires a technology to bring it about, even if you want to use SAP or Oracle or another ERP system, that is just a technique, and you need technology or an approach to bring it about in your organization. And cell structure design, and this is the same about the BetaCodex. Or similar to the BetaCodex. The BetaCodex is not a technique as a set of principles. It is a mix of technique and technology, but cell structure design clearly has both, right? It has elements of a technique, but it's also a how to. That's why some of the patterns are about things like organizational hygiene, how to bring this about in a given organization. What do you need? Yeah. It's technique and technology. We do not limit ourselves to technique, which is important. Otherwise we would be toolists, right? Tool heads, as
What Mr. Seddon would say, right? John Seddon, calling him out there.
And we don't want to be tool heads, right?
No.
No.
Well, a tool is subject to many uses. Again,
Exactly.
There's some rather gruesome tools that I think have come apart in our conversations.
Yes.
But yeah, a hammer
to bring tools good and better to fruition, we need an appropriate approach or technology, as Ralph Kim puts it. And I think that's very helpful to always think, is this just a tool, or does it have technology? Do we have a technology, an approach to bring it about? Because the tool alone is usually bad. I think that's the most important thing. Usually the tool is bad in itself. You need to combine it with the technology of hate the words implementation, of course.
Well, maybe
right? But
when you say
making it happen together with all the willing and so on, yeah, by invitation.
so again, so maybe that's a wider pattern. Maybe are you when
That's
you
a wider
talk
pattern. Yes, brilliant. That's another wider pattern. Yes, beautiful.
yeah. So and then again with Daniel Mezek, I mean, we talk about that, and he talks about the 8 patterns of business agility. These kind of approaches: leadership invitation, clarity of authorization, boundary management, all these kind of generalized aspects.
Those are technologies, part of the technology. Yes, principles
Exactly.
of technology.
And then you have underneath that, whether again if it's the boundary of IT and agile software development or what have you, then you have your
The
techniques,
the stand-ups and the
yeah,
retrospectives and the sprints and the Kanban board and whatever you have.
yeah, the framework, the guide, the rules of the game, right? So at least at that the team of for Scrum, I mean, I know that says on the box, right? It says on the box the rules of the game, and I know that's very much a technique.
But back to
And
cell
you
structure
have
design.
procedure. So yes,
Back to cell structure design. Yeah, the first pattern you already mentioned. The first pattern in the paper: divide the number of people in your organization by 7, and you have an approximate number of cells you will end up with. So, which carries the idea that regardless of size of an organization, teams will never have much more than 7, 8 people, and there it ends almost. Yeah, there are rare exceptions to this concept. Yeah, but very rare, very rare. So usually, you should a cell should have something like 7 people, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then.
And there's the attributes of that cell too that you talk about in the paper in terms of, well, what happens when the functionality in that cell kind of starts to get bigger? You have that tension around too many people in the social, that too socially dense maybe, or socially dispersed. But you start to get 9, 10 people in this certain cell boundary of activity for that cell. Then you go through a cell division. That happens like in a natural system where.
And then there's another pattern in the paper, of course, that is about collaboration between and among cells. Yes. So if somebody would lazily say, "Oh no, but this and that project needs 30 people," first of all, I would distrust the number, because in command and control, functionally divided organizations, you seem to need more people than you actually need, because you identify people as being single role, mono role people.
Mm-hmm.
Monoposition people, actually, mono-role people, and they can slip into different roles and functions and positions. Positions not so much, but roles and functions. So that's another pattern that's explained more thoroughly in the paper, that, of course, cells can collaborate. So if you need 10, let's assume you need 10 people for something, then 2 cells can collaborate, and divide the project or the business between them. But they shall coordinate that collaboration between themselves without central control.
Not being told this is how you shall coordinate, because this is how our project org structure works, and this is our project procedure
how
manual.
market economics works as well. Of course, there is no centralized steering committee in the economy, in the business world, in the outside world. So why should we have it inside organizations? Because people are children? No, probably not.
Because that I think we're totally diving into another topic in terms of the people with money feeling that because they have invested in something that they have the right to make decisions for other people.
Yeah, that's a latent misunderstanding. Yes, just as we do not let Elon Musk run the economy, hopefully not the country. And I'm not even sure if he's a great businessman. I doubt it, seriously. So just like that, of course, owners would not make the best business decisions. It's just it might be. Sometimes managers make great decisions, but most of the time it's not even managers who should make decisions, because people who run the business. That's what cell structure design ultimately is about: to create functioning units of business that should be sufficiently small, approximately 7 people per cell, and that should be sufficiently autonomous, have freedom and responsibility. And of course, the two must go together, obviously.
And I think also I don't know, I don't recall it talking about it in the paper, but just the implication that to have a profit and loss statement on a 10-person group, that's a
Can we agree to
conceptual leap for me.
7-person?
The 7%. All right. So I was going for it. So let's say seven people having a profit and loss statement for what their function is in the market, and there is an assumption that those 7 people have mastery in all the domains that are necessary to serve that market segment. And I think that would be that we don't go down that deep in the paper necessarily, but
I think doesn't the paper go into that as well? I think it does.
About this, there's the sales function, that the sales function gets dispersed, and
that's one aspect. But the others is every team in a cell structure design needs to have a profit and loss statement which dramatically creates transparency around the numbers and the economics of an organization. It gives an organization another feeling for the economics of the business, totally different. Actually, all this cost management, budgeting, allocations, games goes away with a profit and loss statement for every cell in a cell structure design with around 7 people per cell. You end up not needing any kind of annual allocations. Even discussions about investments, annual discussions about investments will turn superfluous automatically, because then these cells would know their economics and their profitability, their profits, the money they make, and they could do most of the decision making on resources, even investments, not necessarily on the cell level, but between cells, among cell clusters.
Okay. So this is, oh boy, which way to go with this?
There's a lot of exciting things in this paper, and it's not all explained to the end, right?
Right, and that is a very important that. Just because it is an open source technology, you can use it and take it in, and then it's freely available. There's a sense of responsibility if you're going to have an organizational intervention based on decentralization and cell structure design. It behooves you to have a consulting conversation and conversations about what that means and why and how to do it.
Yes, I mean, the idea of our research is always that it's ongoing as well. So the idea here is not that these are all the patterns you might find. It's I always think of BetaCodex research as an ongoing process where we might add future additional patterns to the same paper later, or ideally have a volume 2 of the same. Cell structure design patterns too. In 5 years or so, at least, maybe in 3, I would like to publish volume 2 of this paper. Right, I would like to see it published at least, maybe by somebody else, with another 10 patterns that came up and that are interesting and that most organizations might find useful and delightful and interesting. So this is not the end of the story. Of course, there will be the handbook as well.
I
sent you the draft, right?
Oh yes, you did send me the draft. I do have it. Hey, I just finished the brochure, so I have to breathe for a moment. So I want to go back for a second to the profit and loss statement, or I think there's with the cell P&L. I think was how we talked about it in the paper, that only the cells on the periphery make a profit.
Yes.
Okay.
That's a very important principle.
Yes, and everything again, all in the center. You're making sure that you are. I forget the exact term, but you don't make a profit in the center.
Yes.
So
break even. It's called a break even.
Break even.
Center should break even, not make a profit, not make a loss. So the services that the center provides to the periphery should lead it to no winning, not losing money, not overcharging. Right?
Well, it sounds like a lean approach, doesn't it? Lean in the sense that you don't have excess. I think that's what I'm saying. Lean as an adjective.
Totally. Yes.
Not lean. Not lean as a technique.
No, it is. You made me think about what do you mean, and it has several meanings. In fact, the idea is to make the organization leaner. Once the periphery is in charge, has profit, all the periphery cells, which are dominant in in the cell structure design, of course, the periphery is in charge. Yeah, so these cells earn money, make a profit and margin. Usually, I mean, we're talking about for-profit organizations here. Not-for-profits are a bit different, but still, in principle, the periphery makes money, and then the periphery will always need some services from the center. They might be revolving around IT, legal, administrative stuff, maybe some HR thing. So there might, in larger organizations, there might be something, a little bit of research and development in the center, and so on and so on. There are several things that the center might provide, and the center cannot be allowed to make a profit, because otherwise they would be better than the others.
I was just going to say that
Animal Farm, with the story with the pigs that start to behave like men. So the center cannot have power, so it cannot make any profit. Yeah? Would they generate a profit, then they would become the bosses. There would be power excess in the center, and that cannot be. Decentralization is decentralization because the periphery is in charge. And of course, you only get that right if every cell in the whole organization has a profit and loss statement.
Mm-hmm.
And if there are charges by service. Very importantly, that's explained in the pattern as well, in the patterns white paper as well. No?
Yes? Well, yeah. Again, this is where do you go from here? Again, this is not necessarily in the paper. I think we do talk about it, but the idea of the agreements between cells, and that there's in some instances, I think that memorandum of understanding, but there's many terms for that.
Yes.
But the idea of I think in Scrum that this idea of a team working agreement has evolved. And
okay, I didn't know.
Well, but that's internal to the team. That's intra-team. How are we going to work within this constellation, team, ensemble, whatever you want, this small group of people? The idea of extending that, to other cells in the periphery to have service exchange to meet market needs in your domain of activity.
Sadly, Scrum lacks this economic. I think we mentioned this in another BetaCodex live session as well, right? Sadly, Scrum lacks any economic sophistication.
View. It doesn't have a point of view.
It has no point of view on economics, right?
Yeah, it's just that the product owner is responsible for value.
Yeah, but that's not economics.
That's just an assertion.
There is not even a notion of, okay, if you have a sprint, the sprint must have a price, and then you can, if you work with points, which is rather ludicrous, but you could in principle, sell the sprint to different parties, value created. You can press it, and you can in a way specify the price of deliverables, of minimum products, or whatever it is.
And again, this is cell structure design doesn't say you must do this in some way. You must calculate value in this way, or all that. But because those are decisions that are contextual, they're market driven for each part of the business. If how we calculate value in a software business is different than we calculate value in a tomato plant or a car manufacturer. So these ideas and the culture and the how we do things around here, that is
what we know. But that's a good point, Ryan. Thank you for mentioning it. I mean, we are our conversation here is based not just on the cell structure design patterns white paper, but also on the cell structure design concept overview.
Yeah.
Which can be found on www.cellstructuredesign.com. It's non-commercial, so don't worry. Yeah, but that's the page, or an easy way to find the page. And if you look at that concept overview, the principles on the left side, you see that yes, there is a principle there about the center must charge the periphery for its services, and the periphery must pay for those services. It is how exactly the charging happens, or what the products, the deliverables are. That's another question. It depends on the industry and the company, but there must be some charging of the center to the periphery. Otherwise, how will this work? The periphery earns money by delivering value for external clients, and the center must create value for internal clients, the periphery, and charge, invoice for the services.
Yeah.
So that makes this like a coherent set of design principles for decentralized organization. Yeah, this economic thing, it's necessary to allow for self-organization and self-steering, self-managing of teams.
And it propagates a business awareness across the
Yes,
whole
totally.
organization,
And
which
independence of hierarchy of bosses. If you look at the numbers, you're independent. You have to run your business, your client business, the periphery cells, right? They have to run a client business. They have their clients. They have their they invoice to their clients, so they have their income. They have their cost and their consumption, so to say, of their within their team, stuff that they buy from the market and stuff that they buy from the center. So they have different kinds of costs or expenses that occur, and they have a margin, so they can be very much independent in running the day-to-day business. And that's the idea. I think that's missing in Scrum and even in Lean, totally, right? And other concepts that are good in principles, but not. There's something missing. The economic perspective is missing. And that's
Well,
what
I think-
of course, that's what we got in BetaCodex. This is the one of the things that we inherited from the Beyond Budgeting research, starting in 1998 or so. The economic view of the organization that makes organizational agility perfect, rounded, complete, right? You need economic perspective because organizations have owners and are businesses. Even if they are not for profits, they are businesses, right?
But I think there's also this transparency to business operations, this sense of responsibility for awareness. I might call that organizational citizenship, that to be responsible for knowing what's happening in the business. That to me completely ties into principle one about connectedness with purpose for a team. If that you're autonomous, you have control over your profit and loss, how you purchase and sell services to within and without the organization, and that you are doing this with, again, flow coordination and transparency, all those things that we talk about in all 12 principles, that this is all for the common purpose. Why are we here? What is that we are delivering? Are we meeting the market need? Are we, is this the market steer? What are we sensing in the market? How are we steering to it? I mean, and if we have real time or actual feedback for how we are performing in the market, as opposed to guessing what's happening, all of these things, the cell structure design is that wonderful, that perfect container for that.
Yeah.
So, another topic, if we want to move on to many of the pages in there, was the topic of stable teams. That the cell, that maybe the team composition, the individuals, the people in the cells will change from time to time,
Exactly.
but the function of that cell is going to remain stable. At least that's the way I interpreted that content.
Yes.
That stable teams
Yes.
means a stable functional
Yes.
stable function.
Today I had this client asking me. Today at 9 o'clock in the morning, I had a client call like this here in this kind of format online, and she asked me, "So what's the difference between a cell and a team?" She was also reading the white paper, and she had this doubt. What's the difference between a cell of a team, because it seems to be used in BetaCodex, in our work in cell structure design. It seems to be used
interchangeably.
Yeah, exactly, interchangeably. So there must be a difference, and you just nailed it when you said, the idea of the cell is that it might be forever. Yeah, of course, the business will change over time naturally as markets change and so on. And so the cell is and this is an important pattern in cell structure design. Of course, the idea of cell structure design is that usually the cells, let's put it differently. Cells should be as stable as possible. which is something that can be derived from the work of people like Amy Edmondson as well as sociologists forever. And this, of course, the psychology of groups. We know that teams need a certain time to build trust and intimacy, coherence among them. So, and of course, there's this dichotomy. We either, on the one side, we want to be relatively stable, have relatively stable team constellations. On the other side, it's natural and normal that even in a team of just 5, 6, 7, 8 people, there will be fluctuation, right? But one thing doesn't cancel out the other. Relative stability means that you will have some changes in the team, but still the overall theme will be the same. Just like when Peter Gabriel tours, the song on the first gig here in Europe will not be the same as when you will see him in Cincinnati. Or where will that be? Cincinnati?
Columbus, Ohio.
Columbus, Ohio. Yeah. The everything morphs, but still the song is the same song. Yeah. So in a way, the cell is the song and the team is the band. That's a great comparison, by the way. It works.
Yeah.
It works quite well. The cell is the capsule. The team is the constellation of people in the cell running things, And it's good to distinguish this because we have these there are these distinctions to be made in the work. When you say, "Oh, we want this to be as stable as possible," still you can have people entering and leaving, and you can have a little bit of growth and a little bit
because people have agency. People have agency, and they surprise that
they want to have careers. They want to have fucking careers, right? So,
and they may move to another cell in the same organization. They may opt out or whatever.
For whatever good reason, they may leave the organization or join. Yeah. So, but of course, there shall be a limit to team size, which we already discussed.
Well, and also, again, there's limited utility in comparing a business organization to a living organization. Or a living organism, right? I mean, the cells implies that we are talking about the living nature of a system.
Beautifully put. Yes. The cell is a living organism, but a team is not a living organism in a way. It's a constellation of people communicating and working together with each other for each other. Yeah.
With each other for each other. And sometimes in life and in a cell structure design, cells die. Because they are no longer serving a purpose, and there are also, and this is maybe another place to go, the temporary cells. There are temporary cells that serve, again,
innovation, as we discussed last time, right? They might be around innovation projects, innovation stuff that has a beginning and an end.
Skunk works.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I say the Christmas party. You might have a team for that, and that's not periphery because no client pays a bill for that. But if you like, a Christmas party could be a center project. You open it for a couple weeks or months and then close it down.
And the idea of so there was also a statement in the white paper, in the current white paper, about there is no such thing as large projects.
Yes.
And that was that kind of flipped my head around here because I've spent a long time. I spent 5 years in my last gig on one project. Hundreds of millions of dollars, and I thought, well, that's a huge project. But then I thought about it for a moment. But what were the teams that were beyond 7 or 8 people? They weren't very effective, right? And they weren't necessarily well defined.
They are not teams. Pardon? They are groups. Then.
Well, again, how they were defined, and again, the taxonomy and the lexicon in the project changed several times in the course of it. But the idea of creating these socially dense groups of people serving a specific, because if with 7 people, you need to be very specific about the function that's going to serve, because you need to collaborate across other groups of 777. So if we had, for example, on this project, I think there may have been 400 people involved in this project.
Yeah.
Now, again,
little wonder that nothing gets done in those kinds of projects. Right? Well, and that nobody is responsible. There's no transparency. There cannot be responsibility. It's just about control.
Well, the tragedy is partially that one person, is the one throat to choke, and that is literally that metaphor, which is a horrible metaphor, and that totally destroys it. But the idea that there's no such thing as individual performance, that we only deliver value someone could argue that, but people together, people
we
deliver
pull
value
together. That's beautiful. Ensemble. I think that's a bit of it, right?
Yes, ensemble.
Value creation is always ensemble.
Yeah. Can you imagine a 400-person, marching band? What kind of music can you make with a marching band that big?
You have to move to sheet music, as we will say.
Yes, you have to. And you can't deviate from the score. You've got sections of 10 people all playing the same notes at the same time. Not much creativity. Now, if you are building a skyscraper with a blueprint with construction materials that are stable, that the relationship between the construction materials and their bonding materials and those kinds of things are the same. Well,
but in construction, you break down this is a great example. You would say that building a skyscraper is a big project. Yes and no, because it's breaking. I do not actually know the term in English right now, but you break down a construction thing into
decomposed
into different works, as we call it in German, Gewerke, like plumbing.
Different. Not practices, different disciplines, or that kind of thing. I think I know what you're talking about.
So you break it down in let's say functioning modules that are worked upon, and of course those have in construction they have logical timing, of course. But
that's complicated work.
Yeah, this is, by the way, with regards to cell structure design, this is an idea that I found most consistently, most coherently, I think, described in a book that's not available new anymore, but it's by Stephen. It's called Adaptive Enterprise. Stephen, I have it here in the studio as well. Adaptive Enterprise, beautiful book from the 1990s, and this author, I will look up his book right now. He describes very well that large projects, or any kind of project or work that seems to require larger groups of people needs to be modularized. And if you do not modularize, you're just sloppy. You're an amateur. You're an idiot. You're a fool, right? So when my clients now tell me, and I found this logic or concept again in the work of Ernst Weichselbaum, a colleague from Austria I wrote a book with. And he put this very well. He said there's no such thing as a large project. There is only many smaller projects with the same address. I think that puts it very well. Yes, that's very neat.
Oh, well, in the interest of not saying everything and leaving some tension and curiosity amongst those viewers and listeners, what would you like to? How would you like to close our session today? What would be the tease for?
By the way, this is the book I just mentioned by Stephen Heckel. He's not active anymore. Adaptive Enterprise. Only get it used. Very good. It's really very, very, very insightful. It's old. It's from 1990 or something, but it's highly recommended. So this is one of the things. 1999, so it's not that old.
Not that old to you and me.
It's just brilliant.
Old
it's just brilliant. I can only recommend to buy it and to read it, because it has some beautiful. Every agilist as well should read it. This should be one of the agile books to read, and little books to read as well. Adaptive Enterprise by Stephen Heckel.
And now your camera is backward there, I think, so we may need to put that in. You may need to make a post on that on LinkedIn.
If it's backward, I turn it around and it should be okay, right? Oh my God, this was the oldest joke in the world, but okay.
Old jokes. I'm we're of the same vintage, so we can appreciate those jokes. So everyone who's out there, download the white paper, read it, read the assorted lead up to the white paper. If you're in Germany and
also we want to
read German, buy the book, buy the cell structure design book, the cell structure design book in English, coming out hopefully later this year. Yes, we shall see. And if you have any questions at all, Niels, myself, Silke, Peter, and you can go to the BetaCodex network where we all hang out there, and you can find us in various and sundry places on the interwebs, if you will. So, closing remarks, Niels.
Thank you for discussing this with me, Ryan. This is the newest research, so I was very excited about talking a little bit about it. I hope that many readers will find the white paper and discuss it. Of course, the idea is not for people to believe in this white paper, it's to discuss, to question, to add to it, to refine the research, to make it, to socialize it, and to question, the assumptions that we make and so on, and to appropriate this kind of insight that's in the white paper. So read it, enjoy it, and let's discuss.
Absolutely, move the ball forward if we want, or
Together.
the practice, or whatever.
Together, if possible.
Together, everyone. Thank you for the precious gift of your time and attention, and we will see you next week on BetaCodex Live.